Hi everybody, my name's Cam Wallace. I am the Head of Business Development for the bank. Goodness knows how I got that job, but here we are. I'm lucky enough to have 4 really red-hot panellists full of interesting information to share today. If this is your first visit to the North Harbour Partners Centre, then welcome. Pretty pleased with this new home. It's quite a sexy space, but not as sexy as these 4. I particularly like Stanley's haircut. I guess preparing for the session, I read an article in the Washington Post, and I first stumbled across this article a couple of months ago, and I went back to look it up because it sort of sets the scene for the current environment. And there were 2 quotes that I just want to quickly read you, right, from that article. The first was from a guy called David Friedman, and he's a professor in infectious diseases at the University of Alabama. And he says, I'm not sure travel will ever look like it did in 2019. How close we can get, I don't know. Given physical changes that have been put in place to address the pandemic, I just can't see it going back to normal for a long time. I just can't see that happening for the next 3 to 5 years. So I guess we're kind of locked in this pattern based on David Friedman's view for a while. The other quote from the article I thought was pretty interesting was from a guy from Johns Hopkins, who said, a guy called Eric Toner, who said, for those that have gotten both shots and waited for 2 weeks for protection, he said, they should look for destinations where vaccination programs are robust, statistics are reliable, and positivity rates are low, as in 5 per 100,000 people or less. Shivers, that looks pretty difficult from where I'm standing, and if you think about what's going on in New South Wales at the moment and where the West Island's at, right? Actually, I think travel's going to be pretty damn difficult, and if you can travel, can you get insurance, right? So I guess that sort of begets the question that sort of underlies this panel. How the heck can we grow businesses and go global from our living rooms or our backyards or from the far north, right, Jules? The first panellist, I guess, is Drew Knowles. He's the chap with the influential U t-shirt. Nice t-shirt. Drew's favourite saying is, success is no accident. Well, clearly it was for me. As a partner at Influential U, Drew has spent his working life helping CEOs and executives of Southern New Zealand's largest company improve their mental performance and acquire precise clarity, pragmatic skills and advanced skills to be more influential. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, it is. And it was more CEOs and execs sort of a while ago. Now it's more just your kind of ambitious business professionals of all kinds.
Is there any hope for me?
A lot of hope.
We'll see. Right down the end, I bring diversity to the panel. Jules brings the good looks to the panel. Jules is the founder of Earth's Kitchen, the world's first and only BioGrow certified SPF 50 plus sunscreen. And I guess the Earth's Kitchen story is pretty interesting because I saw Earth's Kitchen sunscreen on the Mangawhai Locals Facebook page a couple of years ago. And I know what's happened since, and it's an incredible story. And Jules is about to launch into the States with Hamish's help, and we're going to sort of explain to you her journey over this next little while, how she's done it and what the future looks like, because it's pretty exciting, right?
Hugely exciting, yeah. From going from the sticks to going global was a pretty epic move over the last 3 years.
Especially when you haven't been able to travel anywhere, right?
No, mostly online, except for Aitutaki. I just got back last Thursday.
I hope the sunscreen worked. Okay, the handsome guy with the good haircut, right? Also not wearing a collar. Stanley's the founder of Attention Seeker, which at its core is an agency specialising in LinkedIn marketing, personal brand, B2B content, and I guess content and events, I guess, would be the other key part of the puzzle, right, Chief?
Yeah, that's it. This sort of stuff that you're seeing, making content on scale.
And lucky last, Hamish Conway, looking very distinguished there in a jacket and a collar. Take note, you other guys. So Hamish and I go back a ways. We discovered, having been sort of reintroduced for this gig, and Hamish has got a really interesting business called Sell Global. It helps businesses across New Zealand and Australia sell tons of stuff on Amazon. He's now got to the point where his business is managing more than $1 million worth of sales on Amazon a month. And I guess he's learned how to get stuff registered on Amazon, how to make it work on Amazon. He started by doing it himself and then figured out a few tricks and sold the tricks to other people. Spot on?
100%. You're on fire.
Mate, I'm lucky if I can remember my name in this job. Any questions so far? Great. Now, the panel have agreed to take questions along the way. So I guess the best way to make this work is kind of interactive. So Ben Maris, if you can ask any questions you like. Satyan, if you don't ask a question, wherever you are, I will be surprised. Good on you, mate. The rest of you guys, welcome. Here we go, right? Stanley, it's old-fashioned common sense that the better your lead generation is, the stronger your sales growth is likely to be. In your experience, how do you build digital influence to drive lead gen?
Look, the premise of that question is probably where I come from, is in a B2B space or service-based business, as opposed to, say, what Hamish does in a B2C or direct-to-consumer goods. It's quite a different sort of model. And so when we talk about lead gen, often what you think of lead gen, or most people think of lead gen, as a sales process, as a sales game, not a marketing game. You're looking for buyers, people to buy from me right now. When we think of digital influence, we're thinking of brand, so a step before even marketing. And we're talking about, this is me, not buy from me. So we're trying to help people say, this is me, and then eventually get to some marketing, which is, here's what we do, and then eventually get to the sale process of, do you want to buy from me? And so as long as you understand that distinction, where personal branding comes into play, is you're able to tell the world really quickly who you are and why you do the things that you do really quickly and on scale, and seas and oceans aren't any barriers anymore. Digital platforms allow you to do that really fast. And so for us to be able to do that, you're just getting much more qualified leads down the other end if you take that process. And so by doing the brand, building your brand, then applying some marketing activities to that to tell people what you do, when you go and ask them to buy from you, the sales are a lot easier because you've built trust along the way. And in today's world of digital tools, it's just never been easier to do it.
So I guess, Drew, you know a bit about influence. I guess the clue's in the name. It's on your shirt. What's the difference between online influence and, I guess, sales bullshit or manipulation?
So you said online influence?
Wow.
Or just influence in general?
Influence
Actually,
in general.
I did something just before because I thought it'd be fun, because I've been thinking about this question you were going to ask me. So in the dictionary, because it really depends on context, but it says in the dictionary, influence, the capacity to have an effect on the character development or behavior of someone or something, or the effect itself, or have an influence on, right? So that's that. Then you look up manipulate, handle or control, a tool, mechanism, information in a skillful manner. Control or influence a person or situation cleverly or unscrupulously. You could probably say they're both the same.
You're on dangerous territory in a bank.
I am, don't worry, I won't leave it there.
Might not be invited back.
So in a lot of our study programs, when people are, there's a particular guy we study a lot of called Robert Cialdini. He wrote a book called Influence, and he's got several others, and brilliant man. And a lot of people get funny about that word influence. And he used to have the word weapons of influence. And he's just changed it to levers of influence, these 7 principles, because he got so much backlash for using the word weapon. And everyone says to us, a lot of our clients, but I don't want to be manipulative. And we often say, you already are. And what we try and impart on people and have them understand is influence, manipulation, coercion, it's all some form of trying to have someone comply. It's about, are you having people comply where you know their aims, you're considering their aims, you're considering what's good for them, what's good for you. So I would say influence, the way you're looking at it, is in the ethical way of, is it good for you and good for me? Great, let's influence. Manipulative is more, I don't really give a shit about you. I'm going to say and do whatever I can. I'm going to tell you I've got golf clubs in my car, to sell you this car, even though I've never played a game of golf in my life. That would what we would call unethical. So manipulative influence, call it what you want. Is it ethical or not is more the question.
I like that, actually, because manipulation's got a negative connotation, right? And influence actually has a positive connotation. So I guess it's just getting really clear. And it's interesting that other clients have asked you that question, because as I was sort of doing the prep for this, I was thinking, yeah, that's interesting. What is the difference?
Yeah.
Hamish, just changing gears, I guess. So we Stanley and Drew have talked about how do we influence, right? I guess in terms of your piece of the puzzle, most of the time in I guess the old pre-COVID world, going to destination markets meant visiting them, finding agents or distributors, doing a deal, right, sending them some stock, sometimes on consignment, right, and then effectively asking them to flog it in their destination, in the whatever the export market was. I mean, what's changed?
Well, it's really interesting. Obviously, you can't go to these markets. You can't go to a lot of the trade fairs that were happening, and you know that's meant for a lot of companies it's a big challenge. And so that's where, you know, from our point of view with the helping people on marketplaces, that's like your entry or beachhead into a country. So you can do that from here. The fulfillment can be taken care of. And you get into the market, you can test the market that way, you can test price, you can get feedback on reviews, and you can see where people are buying, like are they a majority Southern California, for example. Then you can start to target your distribution or finding a distributor activities based on that information. And you've got a much stronger leverage when it comes to the conversation. So rather than chasing, you often get people coming to you. But so hence, you know, if you can't be in the marketplace, then you've got to look to the online opportunity, and marketplaces is where you can do that. And obviously consumers buying online just took off over COVID. Like no surprises there. And I mean, Amazon, for example, grew by 33 to 40% per quarter or overall, and that's off a massive base. So it was huge. And so really it's like tapping into that there. But the thing is that people start looking, in New Zealand it's not such a big thing, but in America, 60% of people start their buying journey on a marketplace online, and then they will bounce around. They might have a look at a website or socials, but they begin on a marketplace. So that's where you want to be.
So I guess the fundamental changes in both buyer and seller behaviour are?
Well, so from a, you know, seller behaviour is they, you know, in the past where they might have bought in store, you know, now they're looking online, or they buy in store, they like it, subsequent purchases they buy online, and the online is Amazon. So and then for the seller, it's launching on these marketplaces, and then you've got leverage to find distributors.
So Jules, how did it work for you, right? Because I see you've got 4,500 followers on Facebook. That's not bad for a one-woman army. Right, how did you get started? So, was it through the online channel, or what was the story?
Yeah, it was a very different story to trying to do it. I started off with a mission, I guess, and that preceded the business. So when it changed the dynamics, so I just showed up. I showed up at the markets, at every festival. I originally took a retro caravan around the country, 1959 caravan, all decaled in EK, and gave out samples on the beach, and then I just rocked up to the local health shop and pharmacy, all sandy-toed, and dumped a box of sunscreen on their counter and said, there's going to be a whole lot of people coming up from the beach soon to buy from you. Do you want to buy a box? And that's how I got 95% of my retailers. And then it just sort of got a groundswell, a buzz from there, and just kept showing up, really, and believing in the mission. My mission was, I'd been on walkabout around the world for 10 years and living in working with forest regeneration projects and coral regeneration, and saw that there's a problem that our chemical sunscreens are killing our coral globally, and it's critical. So that mission began my business, and that changed the energy and dynamics and flow, whereas it drew me in. I always had the resources and the energy and the people showing up to expand it. So it's without trying to sell online, it was just people coming to look for it because they cared.
I guess, Stanley, if you think about the influence model that Jules has used, the keep showing up model, right? There's a bit of similarities in terms of your approach, right, on LinkedIn and I guess online, and you know, I see lots of vanity posts on LinkedIn, right, and online, and I'm not kind of into vanity posts. I don't create much content, but I do use LinkedIn every day for research. Am I missing a trick?
Yeah, yes, that's the answer. Look, I get this question all the time from people that, like, I don't want to put posts out there. I don't need to develop a personal brand. I don't need to put anything out there online. And I always just try to bring it back to something that people understand. And yesterday when we were here at another event, we talked about triggers and barbecue pictures, right? And we talked about going to the summer barbecues with your friends and family and other business colleagues and networks. And so if I was to ask you, Cam, when you're at these barbecues, what do you talk about? Do you talk about some dissertation that you wrote on some big thought leadership concept, or do you tell stories?
Generally, it's a few beers and tell a few stories, tell a few lies.
Exactly, right? And that's all of us. When you're in person, you're telling stories. And that storytelling helps you build your reputation. And all a personal brand is and an online presence is a digital version of that reputation. And so the best way to build it is to tell stories.
How often do you have to do that? Because it seems like a hassle.
How often do you hang out with your friends and tell stories?
Not often enough, mate,
Yeah.
because I work for the bank.
And you'd want to do more, right?
I'd love to do more.
So telling stories is something that humans love. We love doing it. We all do it. Why don't you want to do it more? So the answer to the question is as often as possible. Then the question is, how do I resource to do that? And that's
But do the stories have to have a sort of common thread, right? Because you're not just posting about random things, right?
Yep, you're the common thread. So especially when you're building a personal brand, it's you. And if it's a brand, like if it's Earth Kitchen, you're talking about Earth Kitchen's story.
What happens if I'm not very interesting?
Well, then you need to talk to me and I can make you interesting.
I don't think that's possible.
I'm
But
happy to speak to exactly what he's
Yeah.
talking about because I'm in the process again myself.
Yeah.
So have you made Drew interesting, Stanley?
Yeah, well, it was really hard, but we managed to figure it out. And he's really interesting now. But I think what people do is and especially Kiwis and Australians are very similar, and it's probably an old throwback to the British, is that we're pretty, it's that tall poppy thing, we're pretty humble, we don't like to talk about ourselves a whole lot and talk up about ourselves. But if you just grab some storytelling models and apply your story over top of it, you'll find that your story becomes super interesting because you've just put it in a way that people can absorb it and take it in. And so everyone has an interesting story, and especially over the last 18 months, we all have a story because the world got flipped upside down and everyone was somewhere. So you all do have a story, you just need help telling it in a way that other people want to listen.
Hamish, do you need a story to sell stuff on Amazon?
Look, in the past you didn't, but now it's really moved. Amazon's moved through stages where it used to be about just putting anything up on there and it would sell, and then it moved to about the data and the search data, and now it's really moved to the brand story and the brand presence. So that's been a really interesting transition, and so if you don't have that, then you are very commoditized. So the story is a critical part to have.
And is that the New Zealand story? Is the New Zealand story a really important part of that for selling globally?
Not necessarily. And I think this is a bit of a myth where a lot of people think it's all about the New Zealand story, like it's from New Zealand. But actually, a lot of the consumers don't actually care about that. They care about themselves. So and I heard someone who was up in Korea, and he said it shouldn't be about made in New Zealand, but made for Koreans. And it's so when you're exporting to a market, whether it's America, China, or wherever, it's about what can I do to have my product be for that market. And look, certain products the New Zealand story will be more important. Like in your case, Jules, like that's a part of it because of the ingredients, or Manuka honey, for example, the efficacy or the provenance of that product. But a lot of the time, it doesn't. It's people overestimate the strength of that story. And the product itself has to work. And there's a brand, Fix and Fold peanut butter, which you probably would have seen. So they didn't lean on the New Zealand story at all. It was the product itself, and they were selling that at a premium as well. It was like $14.99 US per jar that you could buy for $7 or $8 in the supermarket here. It had nice packaging, but to make it gift worthy, but it was it wasn't about the New Zealand story.
So Jules, how did you build on that story, right, after you just started showing up and selling a bit of stuff, right? How did that story work out for EK?
It worked out really well. So in my case, as a naturopath and herbalist, I specialise in rongoa, which is New Zealand native bush medicine. So I originally was out there promoting our forest medicine, and then that became the ingredients for the sunscreen. People are in love with New Zealand. They've got these ideas of our wild oceans and clean green forests. So to think that they're applying that wherever they are in the world, they're getting that potency in medicine and it works. So it's partly the science, globally certified, saying that the efficacy is there, you can trust it. But I do believe it's a love story as well for the New Zealand brand.
Yeah, I was going to say, Drew, how would you help Jules with her influence?
Oh boy, I'll tie that question in. It's just so cool what's kind of going on here. if you think about human behaviour and what motivates us, it's many things, but there's a principle which is this guy, Cialdini, has added, the seventh one that I talked about. There's always been 6 of these common influence principles: authority, scarcity, liking, commitment and consistency, reciprocity. They're common. But unity is the 7th one that he discovered. And unity is about a shared we, or a shared identity. And I mean, we've been studying it together, and he talks about it kind of as the almost overarching, most influential principle for any of the human species, because we're tribal, we associate with a we, and if I was to say, with you, it's already happening. You just shared about it, of even people over the ditch are going, I want to be like New Zealand. There's a we, there's a unity, and the more you can have people connect to, I'm part of the club called, building the vision, the mission that you've got, the more there will be people who are in, and the more there will people be who are out. Now, that is fantastic in this instance. It's terrible in other aspects of society. There's the, us versus them. It creates a lot of division, but I would definitely build on that, and the more social proof you can bring into it, which is just, again, why aren't people sitting in these chairs? Because a whole bunch of you would have walked in, and you would have seen that no one else is sitting in those chairs, and without even knowing it, you got influenced to sit in the second row or further back, and you had no idea that happened. It was that in your brain. You just looked, you went, oh, dangerous, no one else is doing it, so it might be bad. So that's the power of influence.
But the reality is, right, when you meet Jules, right, you can see there's something special. She's got the magic dust, right? She's got a twinkle in her eye and a swing and a step, and it just sort of works. How do you replicate that digitally?
Me? Yeah. That's probably a Stanley expertise there, but it would be very much what Stanley's pointing to, of the digital influence side of it, that the more you built both your personal brand and the personal vision of everyone likes to have a passion, everyone likes to have a mission, you could inspire people to find their own mission while joining yours. And as you build that brand that is you, which is all your products, online, then that's where, sort of heading over to you, that's where it will start to really expand, because people will connect with that and this story, not another product.
So Stanley, is that just cult of personality online?
Yeah. It's just storytelling. It's just telling your story constantly online. And I think, I had a conversation today with a lady who was concerned about telling the same story over and over again, and then she was talking about unconscious bias as being a real big part of it. She's like, I can't just keep talking about that. And I said, is it a big part of your business? Yeah, it's the biggest part of our business. Well, then it should be the only thing you talk about all day long, constantly, because your audience isn't going to be listening every day either. So that's usually a hurdle people get over, that they're not listening every day, so keep telling it. And so in this case, I would just be telling the story you just did, and there's obviously more to it, and constantly telling it, and there's multiple angles you can take, but the more you tell the story, the more people buy into it. And to Drew's point, the bigger the we becomes. And it is good when you've got a us versus them in a product sense, because you get real passionate we's who will fight for you, and they'll make sure other people go out and buy it for you, or they'll buy it for others, because they want to defend their we and their tribe. So yeah, just telling your story constantly and keep on pushing out.
But Hamish, is that not a waste of time, right? Because everyone's going to rush back to the stores in the States as soon as lockdown's over?
Just quickly on that, what you were saying there before I get to that question, is like, as business owners, you can often get bored, right, of what you're doing, but the customer isn't bored of it. And you can actually sabotage your whole business by getting bored and going, right, what's the next shiny thing on it? Run off over here. So that's a good reminder, actually, good reminder. That the customer isn't bored. So in terms of consumers getting back into the shops, it's really interesting looking at some stats. UK, there was like 36% of all retail sales were happening online. This is like Q3 last year. In the States, it popped up. There has been this step change in online purchasing, and it's been happening for long enough that that's not changing. The interesting thing is that a lot of that growth, or half of that growth in the States at least, came from baby boomers buying online. And so as a guy in the States I was talking with goes, look, the COVID crisis taught baby boomers how to buy on Amazon. So that's and so these people who were previously not doing it are now. And so I think a lot of it's going to be hard. I would not like to be a retailer in many countries. It's pretty hard. But what you're seeing is this connection between retail and online. And even just talking to a guy in Christchurch the other day, and I was going, what's your split between online and retail? And he was like, oh, it's about 35, 65. But he said it's actually really hard to tell because a lot of people will search online and then they will find what they look at and they want to come into the store and have a look. So you're going to get this kind of blurred line. And so you want to be doing both if you're in retail. Because that's what people want to make a.
But the reality is, having done a bit of research again, right, to put an ad on Trade Me to sell something's pretty straightforward. Looking at the process to get stuff registered on Amazon, to turn that actually into something, a business and something scalable, looks a heck of a lot more difficult. Right, is that the case?
Look, it is. I mean, one, because you're exporting and you've still got to meet the FDA, for example, FDA compliance. You've got to have trademarks. You've got to import into the country. So there's a lot of hurdles you've got to manage, and it's a massive platform, right? So it's not tiddlywinks as it were. It's like really competitive. So you've actually got to be right on your game, and whether it's like advertising, Amazon advertising is a third behind Google and Facebook, and it's catching fast. So, there's a lot of complexity there that you've got to learn and manage, or get someone to do it for you, as it were.
Do you know anybody?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Drew, having a look at Hamish's website, it's obvious that he's got a whole lot of people geographically spread right around New Zealand, but also through Southeast Asia, which means he's got quite a remote working workforce, you would say. Right, if you were going to give Hamish some advice around how to keep those people engaged, to keep the productivity up, what would you tell them?
One of the things I would start with, when you can't be in someone's life, so to speak, physically, what you miss a lot of is all the micro conversations, you could say the water cooler conversations. So I'll take it back to when I started to travel a lot when I was moonlighting with what was Influence Ecology. I'm only wearing the T-shirt because we just rebranded 2 weeks ago, so I would normally have a collar and all of that, but maybe I'll just wear the T-shirt now, and I'm following Stanley. But when I was starting to travel, I'd go away for 3 months. My husband was, he's a professional singer and entertainer. He'd be away. We made a big mistake of like, oh, we'll be fine, we'll just chat on the phone, all this stuff, and things just got kind of distant, and we realized it was all those micro conversations, because it became about always the big stuff. So I would say with any of your meetings, make sure you have regular meetings. It doesn't have to be huddles, all of that stuff, but we will start our meetings every Monday, or any of our team, with at least 10 minutes of proper socializing. How was your weekend? Talk about your kids or anything, and not just tick the box, but genuinely allow people to engage and say what they're going on, what's going on. So that's one thing, like really trying to recreate that experience as if you were having those water cooler conversations and people were, able to go, hey, well, you all right? What's going on with you? Then the other one would be like ensuring that you understand their working environments and when they're working and how they're working. And again, takes a bit of work, but people will not follow the kind of rules or general common sense, and they will work all hours and everything like that, and it's very hard for you to again see if they're tired or stressed and all that. So taking a deep interest in kind of what's the environment they're working in. Do they have kids around? Do they have and this is a lot of what we teach, considering the whole. When people are working remotely, it's not, you go into the office and you can kind of shut out the rest of life. So there's added stressors, there's a whole lot of things. So if you don't take all that into consideration, you will have people going through burnout and all sorts of things, which is what I used to specialize in stress. And it's even more common now than probably before.
I'll see you later. I'll see you after the gig, mate.
Of course. Anytime, mate, for you.
Well, it's a really interesting point, because what my team, there's 12 of us, and there's one in Melbourne, my operations manager, and she's had half the year locked down, right? And so
a lot of my family's there.
Yeah, and she's got mother to look after. She's got kids, and she's like literally she's kind of on that point at the moment. I said, like, you've got to take some time off, and so I know you can't travel very far, but like it's a really good point, and it is hard to pick it up. But you kind of get better at it, and it was a real bugger, because we were going to get a whole team together in Queenstown, and in 3 weeks' time, and then it's last Friday. It's like bugger, so I can't do that. I still haven't met her in person. Quite funny. it's
Not uncommon these days.
We, just on that and what Drew said, one of the things that my team use effectively for the water cooler moments is just instant messaging apps.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have our group chat. Most of the team will turn it off at night, or they'll turn off notifications on weekends and stuff like that, and we encourage that. But during the workday, when we're at work, it's on, and that's where the banter happens. And it's real important. It's where the best conversations in our team happen, and where things get pushed a lot, and we get all that sort of team bonding happening and that instant messaging. For us, it really is the water cooler moments.
There's a couple of angles I think we should explore. Stanley, first with you and then with Jules, right? I mean, Stanley, you're a services business, right? And you've been unbelievably almost successful, right, at acquiring clients offshore, and you've got clients using you who are based in North America and Australia, right? And you've done that. You've never met them in person. You've never visited there, but you found them online or they found you, right? So effectively, you've eaten your own dog food. How did that work?
Yeah, I think to find the clients overseas, I suppose there was a couple of things. It was community and network was still a big part of it. It was still about, I built some community online through online networking groups and whatnot, and I had friends and people I knew in the US who introduced me through other people, same in Dubai and in Australia. But also over the lockdown period last year, it just was a bunch of things coming together at the right time where it didn't matter where you were because we all were in our living room. So it didn't matter where you were. If you were in Australia or the US or Dubai, it didn't bother me, and it didn't bother the other person. They just wanted the best person to do the role. And so for my thing was just about conversations. I knew during lockdown the only way I was going to keep sane was just to have as many conversations with other people as possible. And so, I was doing 10, 12 hours, as most people were, of Zoom through lockdown, and I was just meeting random people from all over the place. People would randomly like or comment on a photo that I'd put up or whatever, and they'd be from the US, and you just start a conversation with them. And then that would lead on to other conversations, but it would lead on to, well, actually, this person could use you. They could do it, and that's how that would, it just natural, building networks.
It's interesting from a services business because I guess if we look at you, Jules, and what you've done, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but EK has just been named the Hawaii's official sunscreen and the official sunscreen of Hawaiian Airlines. Am I correct?
Yeah, Hawaiian Airlines, they actually put an ad out and said our Pacific sisters come up with a coral dieback solution, and a friend of mine told me, so they hadn't contacted me. So I found out that they wanted to write a story in the airline magazine and talk about altitude, local climate, and also, did you know that chemical sunscreen is illegal now in our country? We recommend Earth's Kitchen, and you'll find it at the airports and down to Earth stores. So same with President of Palau Islands. I just did it in unconventional ways, reached out, and he makes the economic decisions for their 250 islands, so wants to use Earth's Kitchen because it's globally certified anyway, and it works, and it's 100% natural. And he's all about the coral restoration. They've got the research institute there. So when I was on foot in Hawaii, I did it in unconventional ways, like rocking up to Four Seasons boutique store with sunscreen in my backpack and saying, "G'day, I'm Jules, would you like to try some sunscreen?" And it happened to be, and that's that synchronistic flow, that everyone's talking about it at the moment. What is a solution? Because they know what's banned, but they don't have a solution. So that's how I got into Four Seasons, and with California, Florida as well. And during the lockdown period, it really was, same with Team New Zealand, America's Cup, it's just this reaching out to people and they're saying, great, we don't like zinky noses on camera, so, and it doesn't take the paint off our boats, so forget about being reef safe and all of that sort of stuff. But, that's how we got sidled up with America's Cup and Waterborne, and it really was reaching out. During lockdown, it felt like time of the lone wolf was over. So people with similar missions like Sea Legacy, Blue Sphere Foundation, Oceans Watch, we all got together. We were friends anyway, but we could bring our missions together and have a greater impact. So it felt like we were linking arms, and then we had a bigger voice. And so that's how we sort of amplified the message.
And now getting into the States, right, you and Hamish are working on subcontract manufacture on the West Coast, right? And you'll use that as your supply chain for sale through Amazon, correct?
Yes, that's correct. I can't send it from New Zealand because sunscreen in the States is a different animal. It's considered an over-the-counter drug there, so we have to make it in an FDA-approved lab, and they're governed by FDA. So I've partnered with a California lab there, and I've been working with Hamish over the last wee while, which has been incredible and really supportive, to get it from the Californian lab. They've accepted our New Zealand extracts as their ingredients, which has blown me away, but I think because we're BioGrow certified, they've got that in the back of their organics book. If it's BioGrow certified, then it's world class, so they've given it the tick. So now we're going to be manufacturing from California, and that way we're dishing out to, going first to Hawaii and Florida, because those are the two, and Mexico, because they have passed legislation that is banning chemical sunscreen. Onboarding with Hamish's company has been amazing in that all I need to do is manufacture in California. Amazon will make the decisions on where the demand is. So we just need to show up with the
So
goods.
that's the next key bit of the puzzle, Hamish, right? So we've got a supply chain established in the States. We're now going to start the Amazon marketing, right? So tell us actually how you're going to do that.
Well, starting with that brand story and the amazing brand presence, like that's the critical success factor there.
But I looked on Amazon. There are a shit ton of sunscreens on Amazon.
There are, that's right. And it's finding the right niche. Amazon is ultimately a search engine, okay? So things like long tail, like reef safe sunscreen, for example, narrows the competition down dramatically. So it's finding all those pockets of opportunity there that they'll all accumulate up to
So
make
that's
sense.
just getting your Amazon SEO or SEM correct?
Correct, yeah. That and also advertising on those. So you can have headline ads, you can have video ads, and just getting on that front page. That's where all the action happens. Like 85% of sales are on page one. You get on there quickly with ads.
But come on, Jules is just a small business. You're going to need a ton of money for her to get on the front page so she gets the right click-throughs, right?
Well, this is one of the beauties of a marketplace like Amazon. You can compete with the big players. And if you were to retail try and compete against the Procter & Gamble's and other big corporates, like you're going to be down the bottom shelf and out of sight. But on a marketplace, the algorithms work to what are the customers buying, what do they want. So you can be competing against the big players, which is fantastic. So,
But surely she's going to need a heap of stock in DCs located all over the States in order to meet demand.
well, look, so how Amazon works from a FBA, Fulfilled by Amazon. So this is one of the interesting things. You send it into like 2 or 3 warehouses, and then they filter it out across their network of like 100 different warehouses. So you don't need to do all of that. You pay a fixed fee, might be for sunscreen, might be $3.50, for example, and they pick it, pack it, and ship it, and handle all of any returns on it as well. So it just means you can scale.
They throw heaps of stuff in the bin.
What?
They throw heaps of stuff in the bin, don't they, bro?
I have no idea what bin they throw that in.
Very diplomatic.
Poor Hamish, I should have warned him about that question. So I guess, what do you think, what would be realistic for Jules, right, based on working with you to expect over 12 months of an intensive program, on Amazon? I mean, I'm a results-driven guy, right? What would I expect to be able to do after 12 months, and what sort of budget am I going to need to be able to do it?
So there's 2 parts to this. One is having your Amazon side of things going, right, money in, money out. What's the profitability going to be there? What we do is we look at the competition. Obviously, being sunscreen, there is a seasonal factor, and it's summer now. So, it's summer in Hawaii all the time, isn't it? And Florida as well. So her getting to 6 figures definitely, and then 7 figures might take into year 2 sort of thing to be happening. But linking to this whole influence piece, Amazon is in America, when people are in store, they will have their phone and they've got an app on it, and they will price check on Amazon. 9 out of 10 consumers are price checking on Amazon to see and they might even just go, I'll just buy it on Amazon because it'll be delivered and I don't need to carry it around. Might be how it works. So being on Amazon, people trust the reviews, they trust what it looks like there. So that's a big tick, right? If you go into a market, you've just got your own website and you're doing some of your own socials, you're lacking. Like if you're not on Amazon, it's like you don't exist. So people won't buy because they don't trust it. So it's you're borrowing Amazon's customers love Amazon. Like for sellers, it is a bit harder, but you kind of borrow their trust that they've got.
I've just got a couple more questions. I can't resist asking these questions because they're curly ones. Drew, first one's for you, right?
Can't wait.
So the urban myth says that people make up their minds about you within the first 10 seconds of meeting, and then they're going to swipe left or swipe right. Is this true?
Well, I'm going to throw a curly one back there. So that comes down to a bit of the idea of free will, which is a very contentious kind of topic. And Stanley and I are in a study at the moment. Every Thursday morning at 8 o'clock, we studying this book called Behave, and it's the biology of human beings at their best and their worst. And the author, Robert Sapolsky, amazing guy at Stanford, and he sort of says, look, if you brush your teeth differently tonight, you decide I'll start with the bottom teeth instead of the top. He's like, I'll give you that. That was your free will. But any other decision was just, millennia? Way before it. So within 10 seconds, no, it's pretty much already done. It's just that the brain then sort of feeds whatever information was. So it's probably not even that. Like whatever registers, yes, it might be within 10 seconds there's something that forms, but it's well before that it's pre-swayed or pre-influenced is a way to look at it.
Yeah, like your conscious brain might be at 10 seconds, but
Yeah.
the decision's been made 100 years before you even got to that point. And there's so much of society and everything that influences your behaviour when you walk into the room and meet people. It's just that your conscious just needs to catch up with it all. And it's.
We have a funny thing. Every time we finish our morning study, I often say to Stanley, we're back at the same point of our inquiry. Got 3 words for you. What are they, Stanley?
Grey. Everything's grey.
Okay, last question, Stanley. People don't buy stuff from people they don't like. How do you make me likeable?
Love that question.
Well, for you, I'd need to add a couple zeros. And then, no, look, yes, people only buy from people that they know and like and trust, and especially in the B2B in the service industry, it's even bigger because you're the product or your service is a product. But it's just familiarity. It's the same thing that all the big brands have always done. The more that they can shove their brand down your throat and in front of you, the more that you're going to trust them and like them. And it's the same with people. The more that you turn up and you show up, the more people can have that opportunity to build trust with you and start to like you, and the more that they can have conversations deeper than the superficial sort of conversations you have at networking events, how's business and blah, blah, blah. The more often you catch up, those conversations become deeper and deeper. And then when you have that connection with people, that's when like and trust starts to happen. And so if you think about it from my perspective of clients, it's about the more I can put you in front of your audience's eyes, the more and tell your story, the more that they are going to think they know you, which means that they're going to trust you and like you. And that's sort of the essence of it, I think.
Love it. I guess we've got 4 really different angles here, right? And the guys are open to take questions. And I think you can see already that nothing's kind of off limits with this mob.
Definitely
so,
not.
I think we can have a bit of fun with them, right? So Ben Maris, what's your question?
Well done, but you're definitely not likable. I've actually got one for Hamish, which I'm kind of curious about, because you've been talking about Amazon, but of course there's a whole bunch of other marketplaces in the States. But also, when I look at some of the companies I'm involved in, we're really interested in the UK and Europe. So is it all Amazon, or where should we be playing?
Yeah, so Amazon's just one of the bigger players, but obviously, like in Australia, eBay is actually bigger than Amazon, and you've got Catch, and when you go into a market, Amazon's arguably a little bit small in Australia, so you can go, right, we'll do a marketplace play, and there's integration tools that help you manage all the inventory, etc. So that's a really good idea for Australia if you're looking at that. And then when you're looking at Europe, Amazon's still big, you've got Rakuten, and then it gets into kind of more niche categories depending on what you're selling as to what marketplaces make sense. And then China, you've got Taobao and Tmall that make up a massive portion of the 2.67 trillion spent on marketplaces. So yeah, absolutely, and that's where. And in the US, you've got Walmart as well now as a marketplace to consider. So absolutely, you've got to find where is your audience and what marketplace is going to match is the main thing.
Come on, Jason.
Stanley, how do you tailor your audience to meet the market without losing the consistency of your message and your kind of inner being per se? So, for example, you might be consistent with kind of what your values are, but how do you position that for a LinkedIn audience, or perhaps for a Facebook audience, or for an Insta audience? How do you do that?
First, you have to ask, is your audience on each of those platforms? And when they are on those platforms, are they in the mindset you want them to be on that platform? So, and just to explain that, you're very different people on Facebook than you are on LinkedIn, and so you think differently, and you're looking for different things on that platform. So telling your story on one platform, your audience just might not see it because they're not ready and primed for it. So that's the first thing to ask, are they there? And then the second thing is, you should always start with audience building. And we often talk about that with our clients, that there's no point putting out all this great content if you're not showing it to anyone and telling your story. So then the first thing is always, who is your audience? How do you find them? And then where are they? And then when you're there, you need to manage it. You need to watch it. Like, are they responding to it? Are you getting the outcomes that you want from the story that you're telling? And if you're not, how do you tell it a different way? So often we have to change up the way we're telling a story, because we may have said it from the perspective of the person whose story, like it might be Drew's story that telling him, we said it from his perspective, but his audience doesn't resonate with that because it's in the way that he would like it. So we have to make sure we can change the language to what they need to see. So yeah, look, it's pretty complicated. It's, it depends on the person, and it's always different. But my first advice is just, do you really know who your audience is and who you're trying to show it to? Where are they, and what is it that they want to hear from you? Is probably where you need to start. And that's a question that you don't intuitively know most of the time. Very rarely do our clients know that answer. And
one thing, if I can add, a lot of times people might have, a bunch of people on Facebook or Instagram and LinkedIn. I think when we started, I already had about 4,000 people, but that was just sort of random stuff I'd done over the years to mess around with it, not knowing what I was doing. But for some people, Stanley will work with them, and the audience they've got and all the stuff they're posting is their brother, their mother, their mates. It's none of their potential customers or anything are the ones that they're even telling the story to. So it's so important to, I suppose, assess and really look at, if you've already got a lot of people on there, are they actually the people you even want to be, communicating with? Which is something that you've spoken a lot about.
Is it time to unfriend a whole lot of people?
Yeah. I think that people, we often get asked that, should I remove the people that, are wasting time, the randoms? And the simple answer is just no. Doesn't matter. You never, I think especially in service-based businesses and B2B, actually in all businesses, you don't know who that person's going to talk to. And if they're at a barbecue and they're telling a story and they're like, I've been following this guy on LinkedIn. I don't listen to any of his content, but actually it resonates with what you just said. So maybe you should go look him up. And you just never know, and that always happens.
I've got a 1 in, 1 out policy on Facebook, right, with a maximum of 50. Right, so to put somebody else in, I've got to dump somebody else off.
Yeah, hi. Possibly for Stanley again. You talk a lot about creating conversations, but that can also bring out the trolls or a lot of negativity or ignorance. How do you recommend responding, or do you respond to that sort of thing?
Yeah, I do. I like to have the fun. I think that there for me, there's a few topics I'll stay away from, just because I don't want to get into an argument with someone over, essentially religion and politics. I'll stay away from those two things because there's a minefield I don't want to touch. But there are ways to have good back and forth conversation with the trolls that you can at least have the conversation and say your bit, and for often the time when it's me, I'll accept their point of view and just politely disagree, and then that's it, and just leave it. But often, you'll see some of mine on LinkedIn. I don't always do it because it's so much of where my business comes from. But on other platforms, I'll have a go, and why not? Because at the end of the day, as long as I think what I'm saying is right and I believe in what it is, then I'm going to keep telling that same story. But often, if you get to the point where you've got a problem with trolls, then you've got a massive we on the other side of it. You've got a big group of people who love you. To have people on the other side that are deliberately coming out to troll you, there has to be something. You've put the position in the market so strong, you must have a massive following of people who love you, if it's that strong of a deal that you have to ask a question about it. So that's a good place to be. And that's like, if you're at that place, then awesome. Your business is going really, really well.
And it's probably, worth, we focus on what's not working often, don't we? And or who's not liking us, yet there's 1,000 people loving us over here and there's one person here annoying us, and we give that too much energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. And I think also, if people are in that situation, I know people that are in that situation, and it's purposeful. Like their brand, so to speak, if Stanley was to work with them, their brand is to produce that kind of, trolls and everything like that. But I think for a lot of people is they don't stop long enough to think about what they're putting out. This whole world of I can say anything I want and just put it out there. Yeah, you can, but it's not inconsequential. And so I think some people just do not think about the wider consequence of stuff they'll post if it's an opinion and so I always say to people, if you're going to put that stuff on there, don't get upset and all, sort of, annoyed if you've got all these people that are, because if you're going to give me your opinion, then you're, basically saying, great, well, I'm going to give you mine. Mm-hmm. So that's the other thing. Be very mindful of what because it's easy to get agitated or excited and just do it. And I have people in my life sort of set up that they'll see posts and they have all license to go, hey, I don't know if you want that on there, and here's why, this is and if I get into a dialogue and they're like, cool, it's your identity, your brand, but there are people who are, sort of those checks and balances for me purposely, because I do get a bit sometimes emotional, excited. In the past, I've had a tendency to do that, and it can be costly.
So Drew, where's the line in authenticity and versus, the other end is like cancel culture, where you kind of feel you can't say anything. Like, how do you kind of do that, being authentic but having a message that's kind of going to be appropriate?
Well, depends. If it's online, the way you word it needs to be as much as possible that this is you, this is the way, I feel, and not imposing that on others. Any amount of people feeling like you're imposing it on them, you're going to get that backlash. And if it's that authentic for you, and you're going to put it out there, then hopefully you own it. Stanley and I've been recently diagnosed with adult ADHD, which is something that's been a long time coming, and I have no problem talking about it. And I'm on, methylphenidate, the medication, to try it out, and it's a bit of a ride. But we will probably put some posts up at some point soon to share about that journey. But I'm at home with it. You could throw anything at me. It doesn't bother me. But if you're not, then I probably wouldn't be too authentic, because it might come back at you. And then what was the other side of it? The PC side of it, or I just don't think I want to comment on that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Can I just add to that? I've worked on social media for some of New Zealand's much-loved brands. If you're worried about your own reputation out there as well, don't be afraid just to say, hey, really appreciate, thanks for your honesty, thanks for your comments, we're going to send you a DM. Just remember that they can screen grab that and put that straight back up into the feed, but it's the opportunity just to bring down that heightened reaction and the feelings and thoughts around that.
Yeah, my background in hotels is exactly the same thing, right? Is that you try to just take it offline. And the one thing I would always do is because in hotels you could tell who it was. It's pretty easy to figure that out. And they forget they checked into your hotel, so you got all their details. So I would just call them up, right? I just call them up. And to Drew's point about people can just sit behind a computer and do whatever they want, and then obviously most of the time they're just keyboard warriors. you give them a call and then they say, oh, well, there was this one thing. There was a napkin on my floor when I walked in and I didn't like that. I was like, oh, okay, well, you didn't have to write a 4-page article ripping my staff apart. You could have just given me, I probably would have given you a free night stay or something, like that. And so, so to your point, you don't, sometimes, maybe when I was having some fun, there might be some comments on TripAdvisor from me going off at some ex-customers, and it was a bit of fun. But most of the time, it was that. Just shut it down, get them offline. Once you're talking to someone in person, it's very, people aren't very good at being combative in person. Most people hate confrontation. And usually they're just having a rant online.
And I think an important point is empathy. I think the more, as a species, and especially digitally now, we can be empathetic of, look, it's not my view. In fact, given your beliefs, whatever it is, you will never, ever understand me or my choices. But I can stand over there with you and go, I get it. Don't agree with it, and I'll never be where you are. But the more online we can just pause and go, why would someone say that? And I do it all the time on LinkedIn, because there are some stuff going on at LinkedIn at the moment from some very, very quite, I'd say, influential, a lot of followers, and someone put up a clown face of Jacinda. I don't know if any of you saw it, and it was misogynist. It was just, in my opinion, awful. And I don't know this person, but it made me, and it made me go onto their LinkedIn profile to just start to go. And I did, in that instance, put a comment, but it wasn't a, you're an asshole, idiot, or anything like that. It was more of a sort of, hey, you're free to do and say what you want, but how about you might want to consider, if you want to have your voice heard, why don't you get into politics? And I sort of said the whole thing, and if you can get into politics, then you might find out what it takes for these people, whether they're National Labour or whatever, to actually try and do their job. And, so if you really feel this strongly about the Labour government, get into politics. And so that's, for me, a different way of expressing my sort of, but I just think, there's so much of a lack of empathy. And I was even like, why would someone do that? That's a moment of going, well, I could stand in their shoes.
Got 2 last questions.
Great, this one's for...
3 last questions. I knew you'd ask a question.
This one's for Hamish, in that we're looking at realising success in these marketplaces. So how much emphasis do you put on your own e-commerce site? Is it worthwhile in investing? Is it, what do you do there? What's your guidance?
Look, the real answer is you've got to do both. And what you find is this cross-channel uplift. And we had a lot of clients, when COVID hit, Amazon did this whole, if it wasn't a, what's it called? Essential item, right? They were delaying fulfillment. So then a lot of the consumers have been going to people's websites. And this was an opportunity for them to then, they could fulfill it faster. And we had a lot of clients that were like 80% Amazon, 20% web sales, and that flipped and kept on going as well. So, because the way the customers jump around, so they and depending on your price point and what have you, they'll go and have a look at your website. And they might choose to buy there because they see some items there that are different, or a price difference. Or they might go, I'm going to buy it from Amazon anyway because I get free shipping and I trust it if something goes wrong. So it's really the two work hand in glove. You really need both. That's the real answer, and that's the best way to do it. And more and more we're like, don't just do Amazon by itself or a marketplace by itself. Really do your own whole e-commerce really well, and your socials, and just get that all working together. Then it takes off. That's the real answer.
Thanks, Hamish. One more over here.
Hi, this is for Jules, Kristen. I work with Green Gorilla Waste and Recycling, but I was just asking you, I think that your product is amazing. I also follow the Matariki calendar a lot in terms of gardening and stuff, but my question is around the patent and, obviously you've got a unique product. Did you go to the patent or copyright? How did you make sure that nobody else is just going to do what you've done or get on the bandwagon?
Yeah, it's a great question because, although it took me 20 years to formulate from my forest lab and to get it right, I did go down the patent road, but basically you need to show the list of ingredients, show your formula and say, don't copy that. And then someone can copy it by changing it by 10%, and then it's ownable by them. So I've gone down the trade secret route. KFC, Coca-Cola, in order to put a little bit of a abyss between me and copycats. With the current climate, because of the Consumer New Zealand testing, a lot of sunscreens have fallen by the wayside, and now a lot of the other ones that were tested through Armour Labs in the US have also gone by the wayside. So now it's in the spotlight, and I notice there's a lot of emails and communication of people that are looking to copy. So it feels like prime mover advantage and strength of story and brand that are going to let it stand out, whether the formula's copied or not, and it has been, by the way, in New Zealand. Yeah, someone that was scratching their head and trying to come up with a solution has now done it. But the branding is, like, in my opinion, it doesn't have the story, it doesn't have the heart. So even though, pardon? Exactly, yeah. So I'll just keep telling my story, and it's a groundswell, it's a mission, it's a movement. So people can get on board the movement by buying the product. So the product's just an alchemy of the story and the unity, or the common unity of people coming together, doing the right thing, swapping it out for something that's not good for the environment.
Doing their little thing, and that they can do for our world.
Exactly. So feeling good with their purchasing power. They've got a choice, same price, but they've got a choice to do the wrong thing or the right thing, poison or health or regeneration. And telling that story, I believe, is really important because it's going to get people on board. So copying the formula itself, I'm aware of. Prime mover advantage, that's why we're going out big time through with Hamish and Amazon. But yeah, I'm not patenting it or in that sense because I'm giving away the formula in a sense. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Come on, Satyan, one last great question.
Stanley, this is for you. I'm in service-based industry, so when you talk about advertising or marketing and have my sort of budget burnt a few times with different agencies, I get the difference between lead generation and brand building. But what it seems like the brand building end, it's like a big hole. You can pour as much money into it. How do you know where to stop? How do you know whether it's working or not? Like, how does a layman understand that if I've spent 50 grand in 6 months on brand building, it's working for me?
Yeah, real good question. So in terms of brand building, it's a massive money pit if you take on everyone's advice. I think that the first thing to do is make sure that the person that you're working with really digs in to check what it is that you're trying to achieve to start with. And often even with us and our clients, we'll often say to them, like, that's not us to do that part. Like, maybe we can make the content because that's something we can do, but actually you don't need to be on LinkedIn. You need to be on this platform or that platform. And I think having someone at the start who has your budget in mind and knowing where you can is the first thing when budgets are concerned. Because at the end of the day, marketers and branding people and everything, they're business people, they're trying to convince why yours is their reason's better to do theirs. But at the end of the day, marketing and branding, like even ourselves for our own business, you got to do it all. At the end of the simple answer is you got to do everything. The more you do everything, the better it's going to be. But first of all, find out where your audience is and make sure that it's them seeing the stuff that you're doing. That's always the real key piece. So if you're throwing 50 grand at it, as long as it's going to those right people and they're talking about you or you're having conversations start from it, then it's working. And if that conversation doesn't happen, then you know it's not working. So brand might be building for long term, but for people who do branding properly, the conversations will start straight away. And like Drew was telling us the other day, like he did a talk similar to this at a thing the other day, and there was about 70, 80 people there, and it was the first time that he had a bunch of people walk up to him and start saying, "Oh, I've been following all your content."
Super weird.
Blah, 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 "Oh, where's RJ's dog? We want to see RJ," and all this sort of stuff. That's when you know it's starting to work, when brand's starting to work, when people you don't know are talking about you to other people you don't know, and you find that out from this interaction. But to do that, where a lot of people get branding stuff wrong digitally, because I'll do all this digital stuff, they don't back it up with in person. They don't back it up with going to networking events, going to these sorts of things, having conversations. Even if you're selling globally like we're talking today, if you're not having those Zoom calls with people in other countries and things and actually getting to build that relationship, then the brand doesn't really mean a whole lot. You will pour a lot of money for a long time. You can eventually get there because that's possible, but it's going to be very, very expensive. You need to supplement it with the in-person stuff. So I don't know if that answers your question, but mate, we'll go there.
We've got 4 interesting people here, and they're going to hang around for a while. So if you want to know anything about sunscreen, then Jules is your woman. If you want to be more influential and less manipulative, then talk to Drew. If you'd like to build your own personal brand, then Stanley's your man. If you want to sell more shit on Amazon, Hamish is it.
Nailed it. You nailed it.
Thanks very much for coming, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.